Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Supermom School. I'm Mary Aldrich. I'm the host here. And today I have a special guest with us, Liz Birkeland, who is a life organization coach, is here with me today. Welcome, Liz.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary. It's so good to see you again and talk with you. And thanks for the invite to be on your show.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. Organization
Yeah.
is I have to say, I did not love organization when I was young, but it's an acquired taste, I would say. I developed a skill over the years, and now it's one of my favorite things to talk about, to work on, and things like that. But before we jump into organization, I just want to talk a little bit about, I want to tell our listeners a little bit about you. You mentioned in your bio that your calling is to be a conduit of God's love and abundance by finding beauty and creating order in day-to-day life, which is beautiful. I love that purpose in life. And then you've been married for 30 years,
It'll
right?
be 30 years in December. Yep. So yeah.
Congratulations.
I
And,
know. I know. Yeah.
and two kids, right?
Two sons. Yep.
All
They're
right.
mostly grown. Yeah. Our oldest one is he'll be 27 soon, and he lives out of state, about 6 hours away from us. And then our younger son is 21 next week, and he's a rising junior in college, and he goes to school about 3.5 hours away from home. So
Okay.
we're almost empty nesters. He's home for the
Almost.
summer, kind of. Yeah. Huh.
I
So
love it.
yeah.
Yeah. So you're the type person that I'm like, okay, this is the next step in my journey as a parent. And like, here we go.
Oh yeah. No.
So paying attention.
We well, we all start off going, I have no idea what it looks like to be a parent to a newborn. And then I have no idea what it looks like to be a parent
Right.
to a preschooler, a high schooler, an adult. And we're kind of, with the boys being 6 years apart in age, it's like we had two separate, rounds of
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so we
Yeah.
are kind of coming up to that final one on being an independent 21-year-old who's almost out of the house. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's so cool. So how did you get into organization? Tell me about that. Because that I know that's your passion, but do you always love organizing things?
Um, yes. I can remember growing up, Barbie dolls were like my favorite thing. And part of it was arranging their houses,
Mm-hmm.
decorating, arranging their closets with their clothes and everything. I have always had a passion for containerizing, organizing, decluttering. Um, and it just kind of, it seemed to make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been there. I was a math major in college. I was an accountant by trade. I worked for airlines. So everything is on a schedule. It makes sense. There's a right way to do it. And that's probably what I liked so much, was having that sense of order
Yeah.
that comes with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And as life goes on, you tend to get a little overwhelmed by all of the moving parts and pieces, and looking at organizing, especially in a schedule and creating routines, how it helps provide a little bit of framework
Yeah.
for our day-to-day life. Yeah. So
Yeah. That makes so much sense
I
to me.
also worked at the Container Store, which is
Oh,
a home organization.
like a dream.
It was like my candy store. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Work at the Container Store. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
I have drooled over that website on more than one occasion. Just like, oh, I could do
Well,
this and
don't
this.
walk in, because you won't even make it to the back corner, and you're calling your husband going, I'm applying for a job here.
Right. Gonna get the employee discount. That's
Oh
it.
yeah. Yep.
Oh my goodness. So you I know you do coaching and you help people with organization all the time. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like as far as, I think a lot of people go into organization and say, I just need the clutter cleaned up.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if somebody comes to you and they're like, the clutter is just like, it's got to go.
Right.
What do you do? I'm guessing it's not just about like putting stuff away or, yeah. So tell me a little bit about what have you found that works and doesn't work?
For a number of years, I had a professional organizing business where I would go into people's homes and help clean out the laundry room or clean out their front closet or organize their baking supplies, whatever it was in their home. And a lot of times it takes care of the problem at the time, but it doesn't address what led up to it. What are those things that you're feeling overwhelmed with that you can't make a decision about? And so you don't get rid of something. You don't see the overall picture of what the uses are for something. And this one example I'm thinking of in particular, this client had a really good idea of what she wanted use out of her kitchen and set up a baking center for her daughter who loved to bake, who was on the shorter stature side. And so we set things up that worked, but because she knew that that was one of the purposes for that area, we were able to go in and do that. A lot of times people end up, Mary, I always consider piles of paper, they're just delayed decisions. You don't know
That's a
what
really
to do
great way
with
to look at
it.
it.
You don't know how to tackle it. You don't know if am I going to need this in the future? And so instead of dealing with it right then and right there, we're scheduling a time to deal with it. You put it off to the side. And a pile is basically a horizontal file, and
I love that way of looking at it, a horizontal file.
well,
And a
if you think
disorganized
about
one.
it, yes, absolutely. Because you end up having to go through that pile how many times?
Right.
Either looking for something or finding something that is no longer applicable. Perhaps losing a check in there that you've got money that's, sitting around. Yeah. So looking at what led up to either the clutter or the chaos or the overwhelm. It's not dealing with just those things. Those are symptoms of a different problem. Yeah.
So that makes so much sense. And I would think that as you go along and you help people with those things, that it seems like if you go in and you take care of the actual mess, it's a temporary solution that then just creates itself again if you don't go back and deal with the overwhelm that was present there as well. Is that true?
Oh, it's very true. We all hear about people who don't have a good handle on their finances. They come into a windfall of money, either a lottery, an inheritance, a good bonus at work. And it temporarily takes care of the problem, but they haven't learned how to deal with the money. And so that initial problem, that situation just plays out again. And it's the same thing in our homes, with our belongings. It's the same thing with oftentimes weight issues, especially we as women, we hang on to things that manifest in pounds. We hang on to things in our homes. Think about our schedules. How many times do we say yes to something that is honestly, there's nothing wrong with that activity or that volunteer project. They're all good things, but without knowing what it is that we're looking for in filling our schedule, it's easy to fill.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to fill it. And if you aren't careful and you don't go back to that purpose, like what you were talking about with the baking station, that same thing happens in your schedule all the time. And Like, do you just need to fill up the day? Is that really the purpose of the day? Or is it,
Yeah,
are we,
yeah.
what
It's
are we
like my
hoping to
sign up here.
accomplish?
What's really going on? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful. So tell me a little bit about, so you said that you kind of always love to organize.
Mhm.
And so I know you coach around this some. What do you find gets in the way the most with people when they're getting going? Um, where do you find people lose traction? Like, so they like get started with something, whether it's a mindset or probably mindset and organizational process together.
Mhm.
What are those sticking places that get in the way, do you think?
Um, I think a lot of times, and probably the reason I have success with my clients around this area is I have dealt with it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I have a true fear of missing out. And so it's really figuring out what are the most important things to you, and let's pay attention to those. And it's not that you can't do this or this or this, you just might not be able to do them all at the same time.
Right.
So paying attention to priorities. What is it that's most important
Mm-hmm.
at that time? Um, and looking at, does that play out in different areas of your life at the same time? So
Yeah.
that you aren't like compartmentalizing what you're working on in your family versus in your business, perhaps, versus in your faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what's the most important thing and how does it overlap? And can we move forward in all those areas? Or is it truly going to be on a project by project basis? So I know I really think that fear of missing out, like I can't
Mm-hmm.
have it all. And then the other thing is feeling like I'm not worth investing in myself.
Mm. Like not worth spending the money
Mm-hmm.
or
Yep,
the time or the energy. Yeah.
exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like my kids deserve all of this, or that's awfully selfish of me to spend time on myself. So looking at what's the investment worth, not only from an outcome perspective, but also an opportunity perspective.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you mean by
Um, if I'm going to spend money on a course for myself, what am I looking for the outcome of it versus what would happen if I don't spend the money on that and things stay the same, or I don't make these changes in my
right?
life. Um, for example, in a health and wellness program, you may sit there going, that's a lot of money to spend. But if you think about it, okay, maybe you're spending a little more on some healthy food and
Mhm.
a gym membership and self-improvement, working on my mindset. But if I don't spend that, what's it mean for me in increased doctor visits in the future? Maybe a knee surgery because I'm not able to move around as much.
Mhm.
Lots of time playing with your kids. For me, I don't have grandchildren yet, but it's really important to me that when I do have grandchildren, that I'm able to get down on the floor with them, that I'm able to run to the park or go swimming, that I'm able to pick them up. Uh,
Yeah.
Not
Be able
only
to
get
say
on
yes.
the floor, but get up off the floor. So starting looking at what's that exercise regimen worth to me, 15 minutes every morning down the road.
Right.
Yeah. So looking at that, not only the initial investment, but the opportunity cost of it too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's really a great example of that priority, like recognizing what's important to me. Am I willing to invest time and energy and money in making it happen? And it might look more, I think sometimes our priorities end up needing more investment than what we really wish that they did in the
Mhm.
beginning,
Mhm.
I think about when I really wanted, just a silly little example, when I really wanted to get a handle on my spice cabinet and have it actually look organized and be able to keep it in an orderly fashion. I kept looking for ways to make all the different containers work that I had, and in the end, what I realized, the only way I was going to actually be able to get it is if I went out and get containers they all look the same, and put the things in there. And it took a lot of time and energy and money investment to put those things together. But I never waste energy looking for anything now, because I decided it was a priority early on. And I think what I hear you saying is it's kind of like doing that for every area of life.
It can be for any area. And it's, I think so often we get used to the way things are. And I'm just making do without really realizing that you're just making do, that that's how it's always been done. That's always how I've handled it. And not necessarily opening up to different options or different opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, do you have areas of your life that recently, like, you kind of reorganized or done something different that mean a lot to you? Like, do you have any recent experiences yourself?
I will go back to when I started the life coach training that you and I both went through.
Okay.
It was right after the pandemic had hit. So this was in June of 2020. Everything shut down in March that year.
Right.
I had really struggled the year before because it was my son's senior year of high school, thinking about him moving home or moving out of the house. It was the first day of school, the last homecoming, the last,
So final.
all of those things. And then with the shutdown of that, helping him deal with everything, being home from school. And I was heavily involved as a volunteer at his high school. And so all of a sudden it was like a part of my identity was gone. I had already been kind of struggling, like, well, what am I going to do with myself? And just really not quite sure at that point who I was, what was my role, because it was like I was so proud of being a mom, but I was like, now what? That whole thing came up as now what? And when I learned about the coach training, Covenant Coach Academy, I honestly hadn't a clue about what a life coach did. I just knew that the women I saw talking about this, I was like, I'll have what she's having. They seemed like they had such peace. They had such energy about them. There was so much fulfillment. And I'm like, I don't know what this does, but I'll take it. Yeah. And so looking at that going, okay, so I'm just moving forward. If I'm not the only one feeling like I don't know what I'm doing here.
Right.
And if I can help other women get a handle on the chaos in their life, feeling like they aren't sure what to do. Yeah. So I will say 2 years ago, that probably was like a huge impetus for me. And I know with me, a lot of that change came about in my relationship with Christ and with God. I always knew who he was, but I don't think, this is like a story for another time, but I did not really trust him, Yeah. So there was a lot of growth in that area too. And so the two really went.
I was going to say, they seem to go hand in hand so often when we're struggling with something. There's so often a connection between our relationship with God and whatever is going on in life.
Yeah.
And they have to be reconciled at the same time in order to really move forward well, I think.
Right. And I think I'm not like, I don't do a lot of spiritual coaching, but
Mhm.
I know that for me to know that I've got the spiritual foundation in my coaching
Yeah.
practice, whether I talk about it at all, no matter what anybody's faith is,
Mhm.
I know that that basis of what we're working on is helping somebody to feel like they're valued, feel like they're worth it, feel like, what they have to offer people is worthwhile. And so, yeah,
Yeah. That's
I don't know
beautiful.
if I answered your question or not.
No, it was good. It was good. And what I noticed is that the I mean, our God is a God of order. He's a God of structure. He has patterns. He's created things to operate in um in I want to use a big word like synchronicity, like working together in those patterns. And it's exciting to see that we can do some work, like he's created us to work that way too, so that we
Mhm.
can,
Yeah,
that we experience peace when we're operating in those kinds of structured ways. That's so
great.
valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I think of chaos versus order.
Hmm.
And I've always, and I'm learning that it's probably not just me who has been drawn toward
Yeah.
that feeling of order. And what are the simple things in there? I think as humans, it's really easy for us to feel like we have to do it all
Hmm.
ourselves. And the harder we work, and if I can just figure out the better, little hamster wheel here.
Yeah. Then it'll all, if I can just scramble a little bit harder and faster, then it'll all
Mhm,
end up okay.
mhm. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's not the way it works.
no, no.
Yeah. I have another curiosity question for you. Because I know this comes up a lot in my groups, and I wonder if you experience it too. What do you do when you've got somebody that they're trying, and maybe for a listener here, that maybe they're trying to get organized, they're trying to keep things tidy, but they feel like they're working against the other people in their family. Like the other, I'm trying to put things away, but all of my children or my husband don't put things away, don't know how to keep it cleaned up or whatever. And so they come with this sort of like tug of war, so to speak, on whether or not you can actually have an organized environment or an organized schedule. Even I know that
Mhm,
that's a struggle for people.
mhm,
How do you address that when, yeah, when you've got people that you feel like they're working against you?
mhm. I if you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have said, well, you just make them do it your way. Um,
Uh-huh.
because like, well, no, mom said. Um, but honestly, looking at what is it that they're stumbling on too.
Mm,
If you're trying to get your children to pick their toys up, is it more important to you that things are put away?
mm,
Or is it more important to you that they take some ownership of it? Um, is it more important how they do it?
mm,
I mean, if you're struggling with a 7-year-old putting his Legos away, and you think they should all be in by color and size of Lego, is that more important to you, or is that more important to your 7-year-old? So kind of looking
yeah.
at what's the purpose behind
Yeah,
it.
it goes back, I was just thinking it goes back to that purpose and priority.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times there's a lot of letting go that happens with this. And when we let go of what it is we're clinging to, what we're hanging on to,
Mm-hmm.
asking what's the purpose here? How is it serving me? and how's it serving others? And I also try and give all of us a lot of grace, because honestly, if you think about what led you up to this point, you're doing the best you can with
Yeah.
what you've got right now.
Right.
And everybody else is too.
Yeah. So is everybody.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to be perfectly honest, that's a really big thing for me to acknowledge, because I've always tried to have control of a lot of my life, that I'm in charge.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's a right way to do it, a wrong
Yeah.
way to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
And
really-
allowing other people to have their ways of doing it that are different from our right way is,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Not necessarily so much there's a right way versus a wrong
Right.
way, versus there is a good enough way.
Mhm.
And understanding a lot of times, if there's a wrong way, we're totally going to know it. You know, that
That's true.
it really goes way outside the boundaries here, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so oftentimes there's more than one right way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think we probably don't perceive that there's more than one right way
No.
if we're just trying to force them to do it our way,
Mhm.
then there's not that flexibility.
Mhm.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
end up fighting each other.
Yep.
That's really good. I love how you put that it goes back to the purpose and the priority, doesn't it? It's like, what do you want to be the most important thing in the process of trying, is
Mhm.
getting it clean the most important thing, or is letting them take responsibility for it the most important thing? It goes back to that priority thing, like what you talked about at the beginning.
No, and with a 27-year-old and a 21-year-old almost, it's like I realize how many things we've had to teach these young men
Mm-hmm.
that maybe we take for granted as having always known. And yet at some point there was a point where we didn't know how to do this, and so
Yeah.
a lot of it is teaching and opening eyes to what could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly been a big mind shift for me, especially in the last 2 years. What could be
What
versus
could be.
what is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I love that you're pointing out that so many things that we think, oh, they've just always known how to do that. It's a skill. They learned how to do it at one point, and not everybody has learned how to do that. Not everybody has developed that skill, and
Mhm.
that takes time, takes
Yeah.
energy.
Well, and talking about organizing a pantry, to me that just is like, just you just empty everything out, you categorize, you get rid of what you don't need, what's of no use to you anymore, you put like with like, and you label if you need, or you put in bins, and that's how you do it.
Put it back in.
Yeah. And to somebody else, they're like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
What's the purpose here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like they've got gift wrapping supplies, they've got canned goods, and they've got Legos.
Yeah. And they're all smashed in the same cupboard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start
Yeah.
looking at what's the purpose, what is my goal here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What do you
maybe-
actually want to store
Yeah.
in this space?
Yeah.
And
And maybe
identify
their
that.
goal is to have their canned goods, their gift wrapping supplies, and their Legos all there because that's what they use every day.
Mm-hmm.
But without knowing that, to me, that makes no sense
Right.
whatsoever. And to them, it maybe makes no sense to have just your canned goods in your pantry,
Which is why having somebody else come in and just organize it for you doesn't work at all.
Mm-mm. No, I mean, you can make it look really nice, but
For a little
without-
while.
yeah, but if it doesn't make sense to you, and so that's what I try and help with, in any area that somebody comes to me for coaching, whether it's a course or one-on-one, helping them make sense of their life,
Mm,
whatever area it is. Yeah.
that's so beautiful. That's great. Liz, thank you so much. I have one more question before we
Yeah.
wrap up here. And that is when I know you probably get a little bit of a pattern of people that you talk to around this topic. And so I'm curious, what do you wish people either asked at the front end or wish they knew on the front end? Like, or is there anything that you just kind of like itch to tell them on the front end of this whole process that that might encourage people if they're thinking about trying to get support in this organizational stuff and they're not really sure? Any thoughts you have?
I would say that yes, change is possible.
Mm,
And to have somebody walk alongside you, it's, you know, I'm sure that you've talked to your clients and your listeners about this, but a coach is not there to hold your hand and do all this stuff for you.
mm, right.
But change is possible, and it's possible for you to change and create the life that you are dreaming of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people just think, well, it's always been this way and it's always going to be
It's
that
going to be this way. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
So I think the whole idea that I also want people to know it's not necessarily easy. It might be a simple process, but it's not always easy letting go of what
Mhm.
you thought it was, or maybe even looking at and discovering what are these obstacles that I've set up, or these limiting beliefs that I hold. Where do they come from? And are they
Yeah.
really true? It's not easy work always. Um, it's a very simple process, but it can be kind of hard to let go of that stuff. And
Mhm.
so asking yourself, do I really want to change?
Yeah.
Is a
So
big
that's such an encouragement. Two really good nuggets there of change is possible and it is going to take some work. And I think it's probably true too that it's probably going to take work that you didn't know it's going to take. Like
right.
that's one of the
Yeah.
pieces I think is so important is
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I
going to
know.
take work in ways that you didn't expect.
Yes. Yeah. A health and wellness program, we all expect that somebody's going to tell us what to eat and the exercise regimen to follow. And that's not really what we do as coaches, because it's not as effective. As
Yeah.
long as you quit following that food regimen and that exercise regimen, you're right back to where you were.
Yeah. Now
But
you
looking at what is the mindset, what's my motivation behind all of this? Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's
So it's
beautiful.
all available. Yeah.
It's all available. I love
Mhm.
it. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my
I want to
pleasure,
make
Mary.
sure our listeners know that if they want to get in touch with you, they can go to lizbirkeland.com. We'll have that
Mhm.
link in the show notes. And you have several different programs over there, as well as one-on-one coaching opportunities. So they can reach out to you there. And I thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about organizational
Gosh, it
things.
was so much fun.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you, Mary. Yeah,
It's been a pleasure. All
thanks.
right. Well,
Okay.
thanks, Liz.